Greetings, unsettled souls. Welcome to the Correct Views. Sam, I mean Gangi doing political commentary, not reporting. Political commentary for the media speak. Guess what? I haven't said this in a while. Hello, low def. Hello, high def. That's right, there's the low def and the high def. Usually it's going to be high def on my channel, but force of habit has caused me to stream live right now on my channel instead of the media speaks. So the best thing to do is simply to subscribe to both. So if you're watching this, hit subscribe to whatever channel it is. Why? Well, among other things, it's time for the massive Fukushima update. And just about nobody covers Fukushima the way I have it, and Costello, you'll be hearing in roundabout ways throughout the show. Not too many people are doing it. And like Chris Busby said, it's the worst disaster in recorded history. And this is right up there, as you hear, with what wiped out the dinosaurs. It's literally that bad. So we're going to get right into it. Again, hit subscribe, hit share. If you want to donate correctviews@hotmail.com, all of that helps. It helps pay for stuff like FatCam, which you see behind me. The Real Agenda News. Million cancer deaths from Fukushima expected in Japan. A million? November, this is dated November 9th, 2015. We knew it was going to be bad. Mark my words, this is the first analysis. For the most part, that means those of us that follow these things, if that's what they're admitting, it's almost always worse than what they're admitting. Do you remember at first there wasn't going to be any cancer deaths at all, and now out of nowhere they're everywhere? A shocking new report defies the chronically underestimated impacts of the Fukushima's triple meltdown on the risk of cancer in exposed populations, which does not just include Japan, but arguably the entire world. A new report from Fairwinds Energy Education, and that would be Arnie Gunderson, Cancer on the Rise in Post-Fukushima Japan, there's a link for it. It reveals that the ongoing multi-core nuclear meltdown at the Fukushima Daiichi plant that started in March of 11 has produced approximately 230 times higher than normal thyroid cancers in the Fukushima prefecture, and could result in as many as 1 million more cancers in Japan's future as a result of the meltdown. Now, do you understand that that is simply Japan? Those of you that have hit subscribe, you do so for a reason. You know that you get commentary here that you can count on. We know that radioactivity adheres to things. Milk and cheese come to mind. We get a very large amount of the food that we eat from other countries, and much of that comes from Japan. Now, what is it that you think Japanese radioactive food is going to do to the world's population who eats it? So this 1 million isn't just them. Also, have you ever heard of the jet stream? What they are being poisoned with now, that has been found in these studies, is blowing over here in the jet stream. It is not being diluted in the ocean. It is being consumed by the ocean, which we also consume. WTF! It's as bad as that. And I think you need to understand this is a conservative estimate for two reasons I just gave you, of which there are many more. E&E News, Arnie Gunderson told you, chief engineer at Fairwinds stated it's been almost 5 years from the Fukushima Daiichi meltdowns. And the news from Japan is still not good. Two reports recently released in Japan, one by Japanese medical professionals, and the second from Tokyo Power Corporation, that'd be TEPCO, acknowledged that there will be numerous cancers in Japan much greater than normal due to the radioactive discharges from the triple meltdown at Fukushima Daiichi. What do? Well, you pull your money out of GE stock, for one thing. GE is TEPCO. If you're in a mutual fund, get out of it. He writes, I believe, as do many of my colleagues, that there will be at least 100,000 and as many as 1 million more cancers in Japan, not the world, Japan's future, as a result of this meltdown. The second report received from Japan proves that the incidence of thyroid cancer is approximately 230 times higher than normal in the Fukushima prefecture. Those are the very factual numbers that we are looking at right now. I was just talking about the food. There is literally dreadful news regarding the food. I'm going to go ahead and put something on Fact Cam here that's going to make you think twice about eating certain foods. Okay, can we real quick get a look at that fishy right there? Those are the fish, as Christelle goes ahead and moves in here on Fact Cam. It says, surprise, you're eating Fukushima radiation. Bloody cancerous tumors in fish and seafood. Now, the more astute among you are going to be quick to point out that eating a cancerous tumor does not necessarily mean that you are going to get cancer. In most instances, you don't. I've read studies where, thank you, Christelle, I've read studies where people have said that it's possible that you could. Oh, now I got this big fish I can't get rid of. It's possible that you could, but very unlikely. However, the problem here is a little bit bigger than that. The radioactivity that is in the fish is going to be the radioactivity that is in you. It did not stop becoming radioactive because it was in the damn fish. It is going to remain radioactive. And the same radioactive particles that led to its DNA destruction is going to lead in the exact same way to yours. It's not like there's a such thing as used radiation. It doesn't become less dangerous after it's given cancer to a fish. It will just keep on going. It does not dilute once it has poison. It doesn't happen that way with radioactivity. It says Americans and Canadians have been eating radioactive fish filled with bloody cancerous tumors as a result of contamination with radiation in the Pacific Ocean from the Fukushima nuclear disaster in Japan. Did that look delicious to you? In March 2011, an earthquake, of course, we know this, caused a triple meltdown, melt through. And it says this is what the Fukushima nuclear power plant looked before. And then, of course, after the pictures on this particular article got taken off, they do that. It's easy to look up. They do that when they repeat articles. As you may notice in the images above, of course, we know that the Fukushima plant is located on the coastline of Japan. Like all coastline, the ground slopes toward the ocean. Well, this created a problem that the Tokyo Electric Power Company didn't tell anyone about until a full year after the disaster took place. Groundwater flowing from inland was seeping beneath the blown reactors, coming into contact with melted down reactor cores, becoming highly radioactive, and then flowing into the Pacific Ocean. 300 tons of this radioactive water has been seeping into the Pacific Ocean every day. That's where the fish come from, in case you haven't figured that out yet. Every day since March 15th of 11, nothing has stopped it, and the flow continues to this very day, which is Halloween 2015, and here is how it's taking place. TEPCO wanted to build a freeze wall to freeze the groundwater and the water to stop the flow, which is how they built subways in the winter. Well, they tried this. They failed. The radiation and heat coming from the melted down reactor cores, which melted through the reactor and melted into the ground, is making the water too hot. It is literally, because it's so radioactive, it's cooking. In this instance, it is true. It's not figurative. You failed, you big dummy. So true. They can't freeze it. There is no wall to stop the flow. The flow of radioactive water into the Pacific Ocean is contaminating and killing the sea life. It says the fish caught locally near the power plant and out to the deep sea. Believe it or not, the fish don't pay rent in Japan. They don't stay in one area. There's no fish prisons. There's no fish jails. There's no fish oubliettes for those of you in France. The fish will swim hundreds, sometimes, depending on the breed of fish, thousands of miles from where they were. Fish caught locally near the power plant swim out to sea. They've all, not some, not many, not a few, all have tested positive for radioactive contamination. What's that mean? Rewind, look at the fishy again. Other fish, shrimp, clams, and such caught hundreds of miles offshore have also tested 100% positive for radiation contamination. In fact, of 15 bluefin tuna caught off the coast of California, that would be America, 100% all of the fishies tested positive for radioactive substances. What is worse than seeing a radioactive tumor on a fish, seeing a radioactive tumor on you or me or any of people listening or anybody that hasn't listened and ends up unlucky enough to eat this fish? Hundreds of thousands of these sea creatures have already died from radiation, and millions more are sick and dying to this very day. People who consume this seafood are also getting contaminated by radiation. Do you understand this? The prevailing ocean currents off the east coast of Japan are well documented by oceanographers. And here is what the prevailing ocean currents look like. Generally speaking, two surface currents, one from the south called the Kuroshio and one from the north called the Oyashio, meet just off the coast of Japan at about 40 degrees north latitude. The currents merge to form the North Pacific Current and surge eastward. This is how you get poison from it. Fukushima lies 37 degrees north latitude. Thousands of miles later, the currents hit the upwelling just off the western coast of the U.S. and then split. One, the Alaska current, turns north up the coast toward British Columbia and southeast Alaska. Don't want to live there. The other, the California current, you also don't want to live there, turns south and heads down the western seaboard of the U.S. These currents are spreading the radioactive material from Japan. On June of 2015, the radiation in the Pacific Ocean reached the west coast. We reported on it heavily. The seafood you've been eating from the Pacific Ocean is loaded with cesium-137 and strontium-90. That would be leukemia. That would be blood cancer. That would be a bad heart. That would be a destroyed immune system. You may as well have AIDS. You'll be so sick. Strontium-90 mimics calcium. It's a very good idea to keep your calcium level high, because if your body isn't accepting calcium because it's already full of calcium, then it's less likely to keep the strontium. And of course, the strontium gives you cancer. Does calcium cure radioactivity? Absolutely not. But it prevents your body from absorbing much of it. There's a difference. It ends up getting deposited in the human bones, where the radiation wreaks havoc with bone marrow, causing bone cancers and blood cancers like leukemia. The radiation in the fish is so terrible that wild-caught Alaskan salmon, which everyone thinks is such a delicacy, Pacific herring and Canadian whitefish are found bloody with cancerous tumors throughout their entire body. Well, let's just cut it up and feed it to the people. This amazes me. You've got these and there's going to be an NR17 rated R last segment of this show, by the way. I'm going to address global warming in the most vulgar of terms. You've already been warned. I will warn you before it happens. It's not happening now. Don't tune out. You've got these crazy people that believe that man is warming the planet, and the answer to it is radioactive nuke power plants. Have you heard anything that I have just talked about? If you are one of these people, are you what? Global warming my ass. Or you can argue this. You can say that the coal burning and the gas burning is giving us lung cancers, and I believe it is. I do. I completely believe it is. I think we need to phase out coal as soon as it's economically feasible to do so. But to argue that everything we're looking at here, bone cancers, lung cancers, bad heart, brain cancers, thyroid cancers in the millions, that this is somehow good for the environment. But it's for the animals. What are they eating? Are they eating? Are they going shopping and eating organic food from England to avoid the intake of cancer? Because unless the caribou are organically British grocery shopping, I take a Canada, then it's happening to them too, you bonehead. In a nutshell, salmon ride the Alaska Current and follow its curve past Sitka, Yucatan, Kodiak, and the Aleutian Islands. Most often, it's the Chinook, Coho, and Sockeye salmon migration patterns that range furthest. Those are the ones you eat. Why? Because they're easier to catch. They range furthest. Chum and pink salmon seem to stay closer to home, regardless. Which again, closer to home is where the radiation is, so that's not helping you any. Regardless of how far out each salmon species ventures into the Pacific, each fish hitches a ride to its home rivers and spawning grounds in the North Pacific Current, the same one pulling the Fukushima radioactive materials eastward to the country. It says, we all know that too much exposure to nuclear waste can cause cancer. Many understand that certain chemicals such as cesium-137 and strontium-90 contained in said waste products can accumulate in fish by being deposited in bones and muscle permanently. Alaska salmon, as well as types of Pacific seafood, this would be shrimp, sorry, Christelle, clams, scallops, squid, etc., are being tainted with radioactive contamination. Excuse me. So are the people who consume them. What do you think happens to people who ate radiation-contaminated food? Worse, what happens to people who eat cancerous tumors without knowing what they are? The government and nuclear power industry, it says, claim that we have nothing to worry about. When you see the photos below, you may decide for yourself if they're telling the truth. According to the local Environmental Observers Network in Heidelberg, Alaska, they have found strange growths in flesh and meat of salmon. We were fishing for cohos, that's also known as silver salmon, at the mouth of the Heidelberg River with line and reel, said Brian Holter Jr., who said that 8 fish were filled up inside with strange growth that were either white or pink in color. On the outside, the fish looked fine. The growth looked kind of like individual little salmon eggs and about the same size. Their people were seeing the same kind of growth in the fish as well, he continued. And this is what the tumors inside them would look like. I think you go to the article for all of them. They're finding fish with cancerous lesions all over their body. Gross markings, strange growths. This is, again, where's it coming from? It's coming from Fukushima. And we're finding it out study after study after study. Go to the article. It's at realitynews.international. It says, we've heard for years that sharks don't get cancer. Well, when they swim around the Pacific Ocean nowadays, the radiation is so terrible that even sharks are getting cancer. Pause. I remember, I don't know, like 20, 25 years ago, because sharks, for the most part, do not get cancer, there were and still are a very large number of people that take shark cartilage, as Christelle plays our shark music. This is so radioactive that even sharks whose very genetic makeup is not predisposed to cancer, even they are getting it. It's kind of like the robots. Robots can pretty much take about anything if they're not put in an environment that's more than they can stand. The radioactivity is so high, it's been melting down robots who attempt I'm ready for Star Wars. That attempt to go into the Fukushima reactors, they melt down. The robots melt down. It said recently researchers in Australia noticed a large tumor producing from the mouth of a great white shark, as well as another mass on the head of a bronze whaler shark. The tumor on the great white was a historic first. We have introduced cancer into shark populations, the great white shark, for the first time in all of recorded history. Where's the I like Bernie Sanders, I like Hillary Clinton, they stick up for the environment. Where the hell are you at when this is going on? Where the hell are you at? Because I don't see you anywhere. I see you complaining about coal. I don't see Greenpeace complaining that we have introduced cancer into the great white shark. Correct me if I'm wrong. Where the hell are they at? The great white's tumor measured 1 foot long and 1 foot wide, according to a study describing the tumors published online in the Journal of Fish Diseases. They're not really a fish, but that's what the name of it. I know. This was a very unusual sight because we have never before seen a white shark with tumors, said Rachel Robbins. She's a co-author and study biologist at Fox Shark Research Foundation near Adelaide in southern Australia. So I would assume that this is somebody that when they talk, maybe you should listen. She might have some idea what she's talking about here. And another historical first. We need nuclear power for the good of the environment. Coral fish from the Great Barrier Reef, which all of you greeny weenies claim to love so very much in Australia, has been found with skin cancer along its head and face. Exactly the type which affects, guess, humans. The only explanation for fish getting human-like skin cancer is exposure to radiation. And it's not just fish that are showing the effects of radiation. Other sea creatures and land creatures are showing signs as well. Sea lions, starfish are supposed to have 5 legs. There's a star here that looks like a deformed pentagram. Tuna, walruses, and shrimp. Sorry, Christoph. During the Journal of Wildlife Diseases, scientists from the U.S. States Geological Survey and Alaska Department of Fish and Game in 2015, hair loss has been observed in marine and mammal species. In 2012, we found the same thing in polar bear. Al Gore said global warming is going to kill the polar bear. Well, I have a feeling that nuclear radiation is currently killing the freaking polar bear, okay? It's been presented by bilaterally asymmetrical loss of guard hairs and thinning of the undercoat around the head, neck, and shoulders. Polar bear balding is being seen. Some have said that there are explanations other than radiation for these ailments. Certainly that might be worthy of consideration. Yet how many of these so-called ailments can cross species? It's not just fish that are being affected. Mammals are. Fish, seals, walruses, polar bears. All of them are suffering body lesions. Some suffering external tumors and others are losing their fur. This is not global warming, because even if global warming is happening, it is scientifically impossible for global warming to give mammals and fish the exact same kind of human cancer. Global warming does not lead to a rise in human cancer in fish. Can we all agree on that? It is not global warming that is causing this, even if you believe in it, as I've just proven. And the U.S. government, of course, has done nothing. We've covered that here over and over and over again. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration replied that they want $7,098,000 to fill the request, which would be a way to properly test for radiation. Look at these charts right there. Fat cat. Look at that. So there you have it. For 4+ years, the Fukushima nuclear power plant disaster has been spewing radioactive material into the Pacific Ocean. And for 3 years, the agencies above have done nothing. Without admitting that they have done nothing, NOAA wants $7,098,084 million to look and see if they have any records relating to the request. I'm sorry, $7,098. Just to look at it, to take a look and see if they could take a look and see. We found a 1,000-fold increase in strontium-90, bone cancer, A 3,000 to 100,000 fold hike for iodine 131, that's thyroid and other cancers, and a 25,000 rise for exposure to radioactive nickel 63, which I'm hardly familiar with at all. It's radioactive nickel, obviously, like what's found in coins. You end up breathing it in. I'm sure it's very heavy, I can tell you that, as a matter of fact. The amount of radiation is deadly if exposed to in just 45 minutes, and this has been detected at 9.4 sieverts near the containment vessel of reactor 2. This is a huge, huge problem. We have managed to introduce cancer into a species of shark that we thought was immune to cancer. Well, before we did this, the poor sharks were immune to cancer. I don't know enough about pathology, but I guarantee that there are people listening to this show that do. If by some miracle we do get the reactors to quit spewing into the ocean, I have a request for those of you with a background in pathology. Will the sharks continue now that their DNA is damaged to replicate other sharks that have cancer inherently? Or if we manage to get this to stop in a few hundred years, will this dissipate? That is my question for those of you with a background in it. I have the smartest listeners ever. It'll be answered within a week, I promise. DrLeonardColdwell.com. Our sound effects queen is leaving. Fukushima, a hushed up catastrophe. The Fukushima disaster is radially exposed in the Pacific Ocean. But as for people behind the disaster, it is treated like the Manhattan Project circa 1942, aka top secret. Still, it is against international law to dump radioactivity into the ocean, but that is precisely what is happening on a daily basis, according to Dr. Keith Baverstock, former regional advisor for radiation and public health, World Health Organization. He's the speaker at the Citizen Scientist International Symposium on Radioactive Protection. In other words, he's standing up for you, friends. He's letting you know that what's going on over there is absolutely illegal. You're not allowed. It is against the law to allow this to continue. And intimated Dr. Baverstock, inexplicably, Fukushima is immune to international law standards and conventions, and nobody cares enough to do anything about it. Surely, nobody intentionally caused the disaster behind the meltdown, other than the fact that we've covered it before, other than the fact that they ignored the international warnings by scientists that told them this was going to happen. And they said it was impossible for a wave that big to hit and for an earthquake to hit that hard, and that's exactly the two things that happened. Not only did they happen at once. It's similar to the chain reaction of falling dominoes. An earthquake, tsunami, massive flooding, blackouts, loss of power, hydrogen explosions, might I add, nuclear explosions. Nuclear meltdown, don't forget there's also a melt out. That is when the core explodes and leaves a black goo everywhere like you are seeing in Tokyo. That is the core. That is called a melt out. So it's 4 years of highly radioactive water spewing into the Pacific Ocean. We covered that, 300 tons worth of covering that. And who knows where else. But cause is not the issue with Fukushima. The issue is whether nuclear power is a satisfactory source of energy and whether it is safe. In that regard, Angela Merkel, PhD physics, University of Leipzig, and current Chancellor of Germany, is shutting down all nuclear reactors because of the Fukushima accident, which might be one of the only good things she did. Let's not forget that they profited off the destruction of Germany, off of Greece, excuse me, and they're allowing refugees to literally destroy Europe because they're not going to stay in Germany. They're going to migrate everywhere, and the small percentage of them that want to hurt people are going to hurt all of Europe. In this incident, Merkel is, however, 110% correct. Germany favors renewable sources of energy like solar and wind. Meanwhile, Japan's Prime Minister Abe, a graduate in political science from Sekai University, is reopening power plants as quickly as possible, proving that politics override science. And that's so true. We know what these things do, and the very nation that brought this poison upon the world is opening up power plants. Trouble with this is how many of you, I shouldn't be rocket scientist to many people here to find out that in fact an earthquake's created Japan. They are in an earthquake zone by their very existence, and they are building nuclear power plants and opening, I should say, at least opening nuclear power plants. I do believe they're still building one as well. In stark contrast to German Chancellor's take on nuclear power, the pro-nuke crowd claims highly radioactive water, which has been flowing into the Fukushima complex like crazy for 4 years straight, becomes so diluted within the vastness of the Pacific Ocean that there is nothing to worry about. But their cleverness merely prompts a raised eyebrow, the rock, amongst people who closely follow the Fukushima scenario, like us. We can see the fish, okay? We know that it's not global warming. We already covered why, even if global warming was happening, that's not what causes this. We've already shown you the science for that. We know what's causing this. As it happens, buried within Fukushima's complexity, the public encounters an enigma, as expressed by Dr. Baverstock. I'm really appalled at the way that the international system has failed. Now, let's trust the UN, shall we? Quite frankly, we don't get anything through the media. There is no general understanding of the situation here in Europe because the media are not putting this view forward. In fact, I think many people would be very surprised that it was still a matter of discussion. They would be even more surprised to learn that it is still an ongoing accident and that it hasn't terminated yet. And they could be more surprised to learn that nobody knows how to stop it. Do you understand that? This is not an accident that is contained. The reason that you're not hearing that in more places, and now that you're hearing it here, make sure you hit share. The reason that you are not hearing the science in more places is because there's big money tied in with General Electric. There's big money tied into the nuke industry. And there's big money tied into the lie that is global warming to keep all of this going. And they're hiding it from you. Excuse me, I'm giving you all the science that you need here. Source after source, fact cam to show that I'm not making it up. The drama behind Japan, it says, enacting a state secrecy law in the immediate wake of nuclear meltdown only serves to highlight suspicions about how bad the situation really is. If not for Japan passing an unconstitutional secrecy law, which is the new secrecy law that violates Japan's constitution, which allowing politicians carte blanche authority to determine what's the state secret and what isn't. If you factually report on it, you can literally be breaking the law there. So make sure my video gets to people in Japan. Anybody that can prove to me that you got this to somebody in Japan, I'll promote your favorite charity for a week. I don't care what they say. They can go to hell if they don't like it. In fact, information about the meltdown is controlled via biased sources. And you can get their video to me because the show's not big enough for them to be able to pick me up on their radar. According to Dr. Baverstock, it is imperative that the IAEA to have its role clarified. It cannot continue to be the promoter of nuclear power and the organization that is involved for safety. In other words, they get to be the one that okays it and the one that makes money from it. The failure of the IAEA to respond in this particular instance is a very good ammunition to move towards getting that view heard at the UN General Assembly. According to Baverstock, there is an urgent need for proper risk assessment of Fukushima, and he believes that there should be pressure to get that achieved by an independent organization, all of which must be taken up worldwide forums like the UN. After all, by default, the international community is involved wherever and whenever the world at large is exposed to dangerous radiation. How could it be any other way? Reprehensibly, for example, maybe Fukushima. It says, after all, a mysterious apathy surrounds the events of Fukushima. Nobody cares, right? Who cares? Eerily, the ongoing nuclear meltdown, which is as hot as a pistol, has been relegated to second fiddle status in the public eye. In turn, a vacuum of transparency leads to all sorts of conspiratorial theories inundating the internet with serving to radicalize the opinion. In other words, hiding it from you, keeping it down, keeping it down. Well, let me ask you something. If When nuclear fuel melts down, it becomes a rather unattractive blob known as corium. Where is the corium? It says corium is a lava-like radioactive hot molten mix of nuclear reactor core formed during a meltdown. The corium is missing at Fukushima Daiichi Nuclear Power Plant number 2. Why didn't you hear about this? Maybe because they want to make sure that the 2020 Olympics at Tokyo happens without a hitch. How about that? Nobody knows where the corium is. Nobody. Nobody knows. Better yet, or rather worse yet, finding number 2's melted core is an ongoing challenge of enormous, humongous proportions. Kind of like hovering on the edge of a black hole. So what's next? As the situation now stands, if the corium leaked or leaks into the ground beneath the reactor's final containment and still vessel, which is also cement, nobody really knows what happens if that happens because it's never happened before. But the smell test says that it can't be good. In fact, it's got to be awful, really awful, and deadly, out of control, impossible to stop kind of awful. Let me show you how this would work. Let's say that you have right here, this water is nuclear fuel. And if you were to take this right here, let me make sure my low def people can see it too. If you were to take this basket and say that it's your containment vessel. Now let's pretend it's solid. It's not, but let's go with it. If this melts through and starts to leak, this, which is made of steel and concrete, in theory, will prevent it from leaking through. Well, in instances as severe as Fukushima, we have at least 2, possibly 4 of these. One of them may have just blown out, that have leaked below this. And now it is flowing into the earth, which is the groundwater. Look at the China syndrome. This has ramifications of poison for the entire world. And just tragically, nobody knows what to do. They really don't. Sources claim possibly happens when a nuclear meltdown hits pay dirt, immersing into the earth. Some isotopes uncontrollably spread erratically. For example, cesium-137, which is deadly toxic to all life forms, and only one of many dangerous isotopes, is water soluble and makes its way into soils and waters and quickly becomes ubiquitous into the ecosystem. When that happens, ubiquitous into the ecosystem means you consume it without knowing it. Therefore, after assuming a situation similar to Chernobyl, an exclusion zone is established to keep everybody out due to the excessive radiation. But questions like how big the exclusion zone should be and how prolific the underground hot radioactive corium reacts, nobody knows the answer to that either. Nevertheless, good old honest Dave in Japan wants to open up the nuclear reactors again. Friends, I've got 4 stories to get to. So do not zone out on me, please. Keep stay with me. I've got more science, more things that you need to know, including my very R-rated rant against the bark science. But before I do, I want to invite everyone to go to stickerjunkie.com. Right here, Sticker Junkie. Why? Because when you go to stickerjunkie.com and type in the correct views, or correct views, either one, you're going to get a discount on your stickers. Your stickers are going to look amazing. Give them a design, guaranteed. You'll get a design back that looks exactly like it. If you're not really sure what you want, contact them. Let them know you heard about it on the correct views. Ask to talk to David Lake if you want. Give them an idea what you're looking for. There's ways to do that online too. Give them an idea what you're looking for. You will be thrilled with these stickers that you get. I promise you. Sticker Junkie. Friends, this is brought to you by Mike McLaughlin, MacLauglin. You can find him on Facebook.com. He's a writer, he's a poet, he writes horror and vampire stories. He's also excellent at political rants. Mike McLaughlin. Washington's blog, Giant Utilities Tried to Kill Solar Power. Now, this is another story for all of my greeny weenie friends. You keep saying you care so much about the environment. You care so much about the environment. Well, here's a look at some of the people that are stopping not only the closing of nuclear power plants, which I would like to see, but coal isn't going to be shut down either while this is going on. So even though I don't believe that we're warming the planet, there are some very strong points here that we all agree on. It says one of the main reasons solar energy is growing so fast in California is net metering, i.e. credit rooftop solar users for surplus power to their systems, which is fed back into the grid to use by other consumers. Basically what that means is you take and you get a certain amount of money back because you have solar use. It's how they sell it to you. It says currently rooftop solar owners are credited at the same rate that they would pay the utility for electricity. They're getting money back for helping the environment, right? Not only is net metering a huge incentive to buy solar panels, but it's part of a wave of decentralized energy productions, which could help solve or protect against terrorism, fascism, and the destruction of our health and environment and the economy. There's a link on as to how that works. It says the giant California utilities, I'm talking about PG&E, Southern California Energy, and San Diego Gas and Electric, are determined to kill net metering because it cuts into the profitability of their centralized energy production. In other words, what they're going to do is try to charge the people or pay them less or even give them a fee to have what was sold to them as a way to save money. What this is going to do is make people like me say, go to hell, I'm not even going to buy the solar thing to begin with. There's no money to be saved at it. That is what us and the greenie weenies agree on. This is insane. Los Angeles Times. For new purchases of rooftop solar, the utility proposals could wipe out the potential savings on power, the main incentive for buying the systems. Lynn Rive, chief executive of Solar City, describes a catastrophic future for rooftop solar if the California Public Utilities Commission approves the proposals. In other words, in California, you're about to be charged for the sun. Utility proposals call for crediting solar users at about half the current rates. Utilities would also charge monthly fees based on the size of the homeowner's solar system. The proposed fees could make solar power systems unprofitable, which is exactly what the utilities want. In other words, you were promised to save money when you put these things in, and now you're not going to save anything at all in any way, shape, manner, or form. You were completely lied to. It said it's very clear the utilities are concerned about the impact of their business with customers generating their own electricity, and they're pushing back. Do you understand what they're doing there, friends? That's why it's mandatory that you're locked into the electrical grid in most communities, even if you have no intention of using it. That is absolutely wrong. And if more people just stood up and refused to do it, just disconnect from the grid entirely, and that's not possible if you live in the land of ice and snow right now, or at least with the technology we have currently, to do in Ohio. You could definitely do that in California, and enough people demanded upon it, they will. And again, in some of the communities that always capitulate, like San Fran or Los Angeles, they're always going to just give in to whatever communist Brown wants. But Northern California, they already want to break into their own state and call the state Jefferson. And I guarantee you could get a large number of people in the north to go along with that idea. And that would really anger the energy companies. And if they don't like it, leave. Make your own state. Make your own rules. Make your own government and governor. I'm in favor of it. DailyCaller.com. Democrats' ISIS strategy is to fight global warming. If there's anything to learn at all as we move on with our Fukushima update, it's that literally nobody could possibly be worse for the country than Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, in that order, but not by much. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders still believes that global warming is the greatest threat to America's national security, rehashing the stance taken by Democratic politicians in recent years that carbon dioxide emissions are more dangerous than terrorists. If You're going to see an increase in drought, in flood, and extreme weather disturbances as a result of climate change. What that means is that people all over the world are going to be fighting over limited natural resources, Sanders told CBS on Face the Nation, doubling down on remarks. So what he's trying to say is that it's going to make it even worse because we're all fighting for the same resources. ISIS is just fighting for the same resources. No, they're not. ISIS is fighting to start a religious caliphate that has absolutely nothing to do with this. The only reason they're making money is because people are buying their stolen fuel. And the reason that their stolen fuel is being sought after is because you stupid bastards won't let anybody open an oil refinery in America. You are part of the problem, not part of the solution, dumbass. It says if there was not enough water, if there was not enough land to grow your crops, then you're going to see migrations of people fighting over land. They're not leaving because people don't have anywhere to farm. They're leaving because ISIS is cutting their heads off and raping their family. How much more out of touch can you possibly be? President Barack Obama has said that global warming is the U.S. greatest national security threat. And it's not a coincidence that immediately prior to the civil war in Syria, the country experienced the worst drought on record. Yes, because we all know that ISIS is known for rebelling over the drought that was caused by America. It's on every email they send out when they're recruiting. It's the first thing, right? This has never come up in any ISIS report ever. They're making this up out of whole cloth. There's no sources. I looked it up before. There's nothing to back this up at all. You can only find people reporting on the fact that they said it. There's no science behind it. There's no history behind it. ISIS is not tied to global warming at all. It's not tied to a drought. They live in a desert. They live in a desert. Every year is a drought. What are you talking about? Sanders and other politicians acknowledge terrorism is a major issue that we've got to address today. Because they wouldn't want a drought in a desert. They still name that rising carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuels represent the greatest long-term threat to Americans. Why do you think they walk around in hoods when they're not religiously hiding their skin? Because the sun cooks them. In fact, climate change is directly related to the growth of terrorism, Sanders said during Saturday's debates. And if we do not get our act together and listen to what the scientists, and I've just shown you a million scientists, say otherwise, then you're going to see countries all over the world. This is what the CIA says. They're going to be struggling over limited amounts of water, limited amounts of land to grow their crops. First of all, none of that's going to happen. Second of all, none of that is spurring ISIS. ISIS is not trying to grow food. ISIS will just cut off your damn head and steal your food. Use the thinking part of your brain. Okay, they're not shooting you with guns they made. They're not smart enough or equipped enough to do it. They're shooting you with guns that they've been given or stolen. And they're not doing it because of a drought. Did I mention they live in a desert? They wouldn't even know it was a drought. Said the attack has cast a cloud over the summit. Of course, the French disaster. But environmentalists say the terror attacks have only made it more likely that countries will back the international agreement to cut carbon dioxide emissions. This is an excuse by Obama to get anything on the paper except for in the paper and on the news except for the fact that ISIS is destroying it. It says global warming driving terrorism, simply bolstering support for the UN climate treaty misses the point of whether global warming is a driver of violent conflict. The news magazine, if you want to call it that, Time, came to Sanders' defense Sunday, arguing that many academics and national security experts agree that climate change contributes to an uncertain world where terrorism can thrive. If it was happening, it would also lead to thievery among non-Muslims. I promise it would. The two are not related at all. And friends, I got two things to get you. I want to do the dumbee of the day, and then I want to invite everybody that has virgin ears to tune out because I'm going to be swearing like a shoreman with a bad back. Friends, the dumbee of the day. Yes, that's right. We have a dumbee of the day. Fukushima, I should have mentioned this at the beginning. It's going to be a 2-day update. First half today, second half tomorrow, because I've got so much to get to, and I've been going like an hour now. Fukushima news has been both terrible and plentiful. Michael Snyder, End of the American Dream. Why did the US launch a nuclear missile that would be visible from LA without any warning? I love Michael Snyder, but anybody that would ask this question deserves the dumbdee of the day. We did it because we're in a Cold War with Russia and they're doing the same kinds of things to us. We covered how they flashed their nuclear submarine plans in our face and showed it to us as if it was something. Oh, it was an error. It was classified. It was not. They were threatening us. It was the government trying to send a message to someone on Saturday night. Just after sunset, an unmanned Trident II nuclear missile was fired from a ballistic missile submarine just off the southern coast of Cali, and that was later identified as the USS Kentucky. It was the absolutely perfect time to attract the attention of millions of people, and they're asking why. I can tell you why. Because, and I'm not in favor of what Obama is doing here. I think it could very easily lead to World War III. But what you're seeing here is if Russia pushes us, gotta push back. Otherwise, we're going to get nuked for sure. So the question as to why that happened, it just floored me when I saw it. But it's a wake-up, friends, because it doesn't matter if a nuclear power plant does it or if a nuclear war does it. If we get poisoned, boy, you get nuked, you do. There's no undoing it. Indeed. And friends, you're listening to the correct views. If you do not like swearing, tune out. This is where I talk to the average person. You know how you go on YouTube and you can start where a video cuts in. You give this to somebody that doesn't know anything about global warming. Global warming is a fucking lie. Man is not warming the fucking planet. Man is driving his car and sending carbon into the air, and you know what? It's not warming the fucking planet. It's probably giving you lung cancer. It's probably diminishing your quality of life. And it's probably not healthy to suck on a tailpipe, okay? It is not causing the kinds of problems that they're talking about. It's not warming the planet. For the last 15 fucking years, the planet has cooled. This is scientific fact. We have more ice in the polar regions than has ever been fucking recorded in the entire time that we've been fucking recording it. You hear that plants can't grow in carbon dioxide? Then let me ask you why, when you're driving down the fucking freeway, how many of you see the fucking weeds on the side of the fucking road? They grow all over. They grow faster than the weeds in your front yard when you don't use chemicals. Why? Because they're thriving off of it. Carbon dioxide is what plants breathe, you fucking moron. Daily Sheeple, Joshua Cruz, German scientist, finds evidence that NASA is manipulating climate data. That's called a fucking lie. That's not called manipulating climate data. It's called a fucking lie. German scientist finds evidence that NASA fucking lied. After examining the climate records of 1,153 weather stations around the fucking world, all dating back to 1881, that's even before Ruth Bader Ginsburg was born, Professor Friedrich Karl Ewert has made an interesting discovery. Yeah, the interesting discovery is that NASA fucking lied. The retired geologist and retired computation expert from the University Paderborn, for those of you that think he's a quack, has found evidence of climate data tampering between 2010 and 2012, as you can see on the fucking fact cam, by Goddard Institute of Space Studies, a division of NASA. More proof. You want more fucking proof? Look up ClimateGate. ClimateGate. Look it up in your fucking search engine. There's all kinds of proof that man is not warming the planet. There's more proof that it was lied, and now that's what ClimateGate was about. Now we're seeing it here. You don't believe me? You don't believe ClimateGate? You don't believe the Daily Sheeple? You don't believe this German doctor? Who else? How about Lord Monckton? Okay, Lord Monckton. You don't become a lord if you're a moron. Lord Monckton. Guess what? Man's not warming the fucking planet. When the publicity available, publicly available data has been archived in 2010, as compared to the data supplied by NASA in 2012, there is a clear difference between the two. The GISS has been retroactively changing past data to make it appear that the planet is warming, especially after the year 1950. In other words, they're saying, well, we got this proof, so we're going to fudge the numbers to make it look like in 1950, this is what it really was. And it wasn't. It's called a fucking lie. In reality, the original data shows that the planet has actually been getting colder throughout the latter half of the 20th fucking century. Overall, 10 different statistical methods have been used to change the climate's trajectory from cooling to warming, also known as a fucking lie. Using the NASA data from the 2010, the surface temperature globally from 1940 until today has fallen 1.110 degrees Celsius. And since 2000, it has fallen since 2000, 0.4233 Celsius. The cooling has hit every continent except Australia, which warmed by 0.6339 since 2000. Well, global warming, it's only hitting Australia. It hates the Australians, probably because of their stupid gun laws. The figures for Europe from 1940 to 2010, using the data from 2010, there was a fucking cooling of 0.5467 degrees Celsius and a cooling of 0.3739 degrees Celsius since 2000. How about that? The original data shows 4 cooling phases and 3 warming phases since 1881, and we're currently in a cooling phase. Since the warming cycles occurred before there was any significant rise in CO2, they have warming data from before the industrial age, before we learned how to manipulate coal the way we do. It warmed more before the Industrial Revolution than it did after. Who was doing it then? What caused it then? We weren't driving cars in 1881. We weren't. I believe in time machines. Did they bring millions of cars back? No, it didn't happen. Absolutely ridiculous. Though this revelation has been announced at a climate conference in 2012, it is only just now reaching the public's awareness. However, somehow I doubt that the climate cult is going to change its tune any fucking time soon. Friends, you're listening to The Correct Views. Cannot be more clear than that. No ambiguity there. If you'd like to donate to the show, you can do so at thecorrectviews@hotmail.com. Every penny you give to me goes towards, oh, what the hell, a better fucking show. More lights, more everything. And really, sometimes you got to talk to people in the way that people talk when they're on the street. And that's what you got. It's Correct Views. See you tomorrow, part 2 of the Massive Fukushima update, friends. Good night. God bless.